fabulous
love and freedom,
whore-loving hippie.
Whore-loving
What I mean, Mary Magdalene and we're pals.
Times, and I was like, am I just a fuckboy? I can't tell. No, I'm not. I am not a fuckboy. I communicate pretty well, turns out.
Yeah.
Turns out.
I just my thing that it was like feeling like such guilt for the, because usually for me it was the fuckboy thing was the like having an experience and then like wanting it to end there. Like I didn't need aftercare.
Yeah.
I didn't want to give extensive aftercare. Like I didn't want to be like I didn't want to be in a relationship escalator. I didn't want this to have a meaningful life or a fulfilling life. And for a lot of folks, and the way that BDSM can be an avenue for that is really about living without shame and minimizing judgment and focusing on inclusivity rather than exclusivity.
And since starting my work as a Dom, technically as a switch, which we'll get into, I met this beautiful, resplendent, incredible creature, the wonderful Mistress Leah. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your Dom journey.
Okay.
How'd you get into it?
Wow, all right. Where do we want to begin?
I would say if you are open to talking about where you did your training and where you, I guess, like where your professional journey started.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So my professional journey started in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I was living before moving here with an incredible human being, Mistress J. Love them. Wonderful, really wonderful person who runs this spot called The Parlor that I wish I could remember the name of the dance studio that it's connected to. They run it with one of their partners.
Wait, that's so fun. It would be like a little dance studio.
Yeah, incredible. That really awesome setup that they have going on. But I happen to, so it all, you know how this goes. Like the synchronicities that lead one on a Dom journey. Yeah. So many. So I was attending this femdom workshop that was at the local like bondage BDSM store in Minneapolis called Bondesk.
Cute.
And I happened to be sitting next to this delightful individual. Bless them wherever you are. I don't know how to find you. Wearing kind of a Renaissance-esque skirt.
This is me sending them blessings.
blessings, bespeckled, a delight. We had a great time during the workshop. Anyway, all that to say, they said if you want to know how to do more of this stuff, because they could tell that I was pretty hungry for skills.
Yeah.
Like I wanted hard skills.
Yeah.
I was asking a lot of those types of questions. I believe, the workshop was with Mistress Jean Bardot, who's well known in that.
I definitely heard that name.
Yeah. But anyway, so they gave me the card with Mistress J's contact information on it. And I contacted them really just intending to gain more skills for myself.
Cool.
And then they were like, well, I think you should consider doing this professionally after we met and talked. And that's
a good feeling.
It was. Well, they knew about my psychology background.
Yeah.
And they're like, if you've got that, then you've kind of got it all.
Which would love to dive more into that if you're open to it.
Would love to, yeah, for sure. I mean, the two for me go really hand in hand.
I mean, I feel like BDSM is just an extension of psychology. And really that's where I hope to take this and like take like my career, like the impact I want to have in this space is ideally to get more like actual like funding and backing to do qualitative and quantitative research studies that can connect both BDSM, but for me especially like neurodivergence in BDSM and using BDSM as a like therapy modality, not as a replacement for like CBT, DBT, but in tandem with that. I think that there's a lot of either missed opportunities or just understudied opportunities. And like with anything that you start seeing a lot of anecdotal evidence showing how beneficial it can be, that it's like you want to get the funding to start giving more just more structure, more guidelines to create more positive experiences and minimize the potential for negative experiences, I guess, to put it succinctly.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, some people, well, yeah, the psychology aspect is so understated, but it should not be. It should be stated explicitly. I think that's an aspect of training that, like if you don't intuitively have that kind of inclination, which some people really don't.
And even if you do.
But especially,
take you so far.
Especially if you don't, then it could be helpful because it seems like psychological harm is more lasting.
Right.
Than the physical.
Well, especially because we can't see it, it's a lot more difficult to tell the extent of the damage that was done
Absolutely.
or the healing that's been done.
Right.
And so wanting to like take that like precautions to, again, like just it's about minimizing harm, minimizing risk. And if we're able to do that, like there is so much potential for benefit and for healing. And I forget where I was going with this, but with the limitation aspect, there was something you said about some people are more intuitive with it. Oh, I guess, just with the different tiers of knowledge of, there's people that where like you don't know what you don't know versus like, can we at least get professionals to like know their limitations so you do know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And like getting to that stage so that you can like be stopping yourself if you are noticing like a client might be too complex of a case for you, or getting into or asking about like kinks or even role play things that you can start seeing like, okay, there might be something going on here that I want to be careful about dabbling in or don't feel comfortable dabbling in, because you know that there's things that you don't know how to handle. And then the stage up from that is the like being able to actually know how to handle those things and manage those things. And that again to me is where it ties in with the like wanting to create like a course for professionals that is specifically about like tying psychology and BDSM together. And dream world, like all BDSM practitioners would be like PhDs in psychology and
there
sexology.
There you go.
Given that that may not happen, like can we at least be creating more accessible like courses to be increasing people's knowledge and get them as close to that as possible?
100%. Yeah, I'll send you some. There's some really cool books out there that have.
Ooh, please do.
Yeah, have really
You know my kink is knowledge.
Sapiosexual for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I'll send you some.
Things.
We'll do a little book back and forth.
I love that. Kinky book club.
Why not?
Oh, talk dirty to me. Delightful.
It is.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Do you can you mention any of the names of those? Do you know off the top of your head?
There's
not all good.
Okay, I can't remember the exact name of this book, but so the kind of psychology that I study, it's depth psychology, which is essentially the study of the unconscious mind, but it's not just mental.
Like
it's
Carl Jung.
Yes. Yeah. Carl, all based on the work of Carl Jung. But we don't, a lot of people in our program have issues with Carl Jung because he is sexist and racist, as many of his generation, and also when you think about like compartmentalizing the psyche in the ways that he does, there's issues with that, as we know. I mean, we have a whole different conception around fluidity as a society now than we did back then.
For sure. Well, and with so much of this stuff, it's the classic concept of like take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and being able to disseminate between like, just because he is problematic, just because he wasn't 100% right, doesn't mean he was 100% wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Because now in popular culture, you hear words, the collective unconscious or the shadow, all this lingo gets tossed around consistently. It's gotten integrated.
Especially with like kind of like neo-spirituality.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
A big thing.
Big time.
And something I really struggle with is like, I can appreciate using dualistic terms as a means for like trying to communicate a concept succinctly, but I want to make sure that person would still have an awareness that that's what we're doing, and that at the end of the day, I know like my like philosophy is like we are all like the universe, source, whatever you want to call it, that like singularity just fractaled out and experiencing every potential iteration of itself.
Right.
And so with any of these like discussions of duality, it's like, okay, like feminine, masculine really is just like two fractals from the same tree or two sides of the same coin, like that kind of thing. And like that's what concerns me is people that don't know that and like still view things on such like a binary that it feels like they're setting themselves up to fail because they're giving too much power to this black and white thinking rather than trying to integrate like all of it, or just being like neutral towards it and being the observer rather than the victim.
For sure. Yeah, that's a thing. Absolutely. I guess bringing it back around, all that to say, there have been a couple books written about kink from a depth psychological perspective that are pretty good. I mean, there's some papers and stuff from that perspective, they're not so great. They are very dualistic, and everybody just assumes that, not everybody, but the people that are writing those texts, there's kind of this assumption that, okay, we all must be profoundly fucked up on some level, because why else would we want to get into this? And hey, although I'm not, on one level I'm like, sure, fucked up, yes.
Well, yeah, it's like one man's fucked up is another man's
exactly. Yeah, we can honor the pluriverse here, you know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I have issues with that narrative. I don't think it's that simple, and I think that the kind of embodied catharsis that our practices can bring people is profoundly transformative.
Yes.
Because of the mind-body connection, because there's not a dualistic split. Yeah. We kind of need both. And also, we don't have a lot of rites of passage in our society anymore, in Western society anyway. And, when that container is built within the context of a session, you can facilitate those kinds of experiences for people. Real death, rebirth, transformative experiences for people. I believe that. I do.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
When you say, you talk about rites of passage, I mean, my mind kind of goes to what we do still see are things like in Jewish culture, a bar of bat mitzvah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or in, like, for Catholics, there's confirmation. So, like, rites of passage specifically regarding religion, or you might consider rites of passage of, like, becoming of age to drive or to drink. But when you're talking about rites of passage and that being kind of lacking from society, what do you mean?
I'm talking specifically about going through a difficult physical and spiritual experience in order to achieve a level of maturity and wisdom. That's what I'm talking about.
That makes sense to me. Or even things that I think my brain is going to a lot of people's experience with drugs and with hallucinogens, and
for sure.
Something that I often see is that people who are assigned and raised female at birth do tend to have a higher level of introspection and self-awareness than people assigned and raised male at birth, and that for a lot of people that do identify as men, it's usually that doesn't happen unless they use like hallucinogens. And seeing memes that joke about like somebody, like a man, like does shrooms for the first time and is all of a sudden like, wow, we're all nature and we're all connected, and like, suddenly I'm able to experience empathy and compassion, and people's like non-men's reaction to that being like, I had like lived experiences that taught me that. And even so, those lived experiences, like you're saying, like for a lot of folks, like that wasn't a singular like rite of passage, that wasn't a what's the word, that wasn't like an intentional confined rite or a journey. Like for a lot of them, it was through trauma.
Yeah.
It was through oppression.
Yeah.
It was through,
for sure.
For, I don't want to generalize, but for many folks, it was essentially like giving them CPTSD of like, or even as I often will say that like I learned how to be through years of experiencing how not to be. And that's not to say that I probably would still be some version of this without all of those experiences. Right. As like we've talked about before, there is like our core personality, but and again, now I'm getting in the weeds and losing my the point of what I'm trying to say.
Rites of passage.
But yes, thank you for that through line.
Does that help?
It does. But yes, with the rites of passage, again, that it's you are right that it's like even if we're arriving at the outcome of a rite of passage, it's usually through a series of like traumatic experiences or unintentional experiences, or it's still the onus is on the individual to do the work to get to that point, rather than with the rite of passage and that being a part of society, it being I guess just intentional, and also having like the support there, the community aspect there,
for sure,
and just safer and less traumatic.
Yeah, 100%.
Like having the answers like provided to you, having the guides there for you, rather than almost like a trial by fire of like you might have these experiences, you might get to that outcome, but figure it out. And I think also then as a collective, like not having the collective awareness of that outcome versus rite of passage, everyone is kind of on the same page of like, you go through this, you come out the other side, and we're here to guide you.
Exactly. And we're here to guide you afterwards.
Great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, imagine, like, narrative is, I mean, it's one of our amazing, very human capabilities. It's something that makes us different from the other animals, you know?
I mean, it's everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've told you about, like, a past business of mine was literally novel health and wellness, because when I worked as a dietitian, I wanted to incorporate like narrative therapy and finding in
I
my
didn't know
counseling
that. I didn't know that about you.
it was all about like what are the stories we tell
What are
ourselves?
the stories we tell ourselves? Yeah.
So like minimally about what we're putting on our plate, and so maximally about the story we tell ourselves about what we're putting on our plate and what we're putting on our bodies and how we're interacting with food and interacting with our culture around food. And so that to me was like I am very proud of that title, the pun, the wordplay.
I love it.
It's a novel concept, and it is all about the narrative.
Hey, maybe one day you'll bring it back.
Maybe I will. Never say never.
but I guess my point in saying that is, if you have the perspective or the reality frame that you're going through an experience for a reason, for a purpose, especially a purpose that's going to make you of service to your community in such a greater way than you would have been able to before, then the hardship is worth it. Yeah, we know that.
The perspective shift for sure. And as like a kid who experienced a lot of isolation, depression, anxiety, being an outcast, being an undiagnosed neurodivergent, so having a lot of both unmet needs, not understanding those needs, and being told the narrative that I was a problem child, that I was a bad child, that I was a brat, that I was overly sensitive, like just so much negative language, and that I just needed to toughen up. And it's like if I had just been reframed as like, you just need to take more time for yourself, or like you just need some accommodations, or that your brain just works differently, and that's beautiful, or like there is a place for you. And what the phrase that I really attached to was telling myself like you are not alone. And that once I did start kind of like opening up about my experiences, like finding my fellow outcasts, finding my core group of people who were also turned out were definitely undiagnosed neurodivergent for the most part, or like experiencing some form of like gender fluidity or like queerness. And that was also a big challenge, was being that like fluidity is the only thing I consistently identify with in any area of life. And like evolutionarily, we have evolved to put things into boxes for our own safety. If it doesn't fit in a box, it's a threat. And so even when it came to like being gender fluid, as a kindergartner, I knew I am not a girl. Like I'm not a girl. But I don't want to have a penis. I don't want a sex change. I'm not a boy. Like because these don't fit. And they're like, well, those are your options. Or then it became like, okay, so you're a tomboy. And thus began the journey of like decade of hating femininity. Hating, I can't be in the same room as the color pink because somebody might perceive me as a girly girl. But again, now I'm getting in my head that I'm word vomiting a lot, and I want to give you the chance to kind of, but to sum that up.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Again, and just talking about narrative therapy and about changing that narrative, and just how helpful that would have been to like hold space for nuance in the gray area,
for sure,
and like how much different my life trajectory would have been if I was just allowed to change the narrative. And like even it didn't like just making it everything neutral is what I'm about. It's like we keep just trying to like attach the duality, the good, the bad, the boy, the girl, the gay or straight, like the like why can't people just appreciate how complex we are?
I don't know.
How cool it is that we have unique stories, and how cool it is that it's like the definition of our existence is that there is the only universal truth is that there is no universal truth.
Right. Well, politics and religion don't help very much.
They don't. Which is unfortunate because, like you were mentioning, the benefits of a rite of passage speak to some of the benefits of the rites of passage within religions. And what is so unfortunate is that it's like, I can see there's certain practices in any religion that are very positive or beautiful, that are like community focused, that are like guidance focused, that are even just like exploring that spiritual side is so beautiful. But they've lost their way, and like it's the modern organized religion, and even just the combination and overlap of church and state, and the amount that religions have in general become about control and exclusion, when if you actually read their texts or study the prophets associated with like the Abrahamic religions, they are so much more, they're all about inclusivity.
Big time.
They're all about, and like Jesus was a hippie.
Love.
A fabulous
love and freedom.
Poor loving hippie
Whore loving.
What? I mean, Mary Magdalene and Wendell pals.
I mean, some would say more than pals.
History will say they were just friends.
Anyway, wait, where were we at?
Rites of passage, what most religions are really getting at, with any of this stuff, but improving the collective experience, and I think getting back to what it means to have a meaningful life or a fulfilling life, and for a lot of folks, and the way that BDSM can be an avenue for that is really about living without shame and minimizing judgment and focusing on inclusivity rather than exclusivity, and using it as a modality for like neurodivergent biohacking, life hacking, gamification.
I love that.
And just using it as a general like healing modality for any type of brain.
Shame is the piece that I think you mentioned something earlier.
Shame. Sorry, I had to.
Shame.
I had to poke Game of Thrones.
Shame.
Okay, we're back in.
Shame.
Anyways,
shame. That regarding this whole journey that has been, you're when you were sharing your story about fluidity from childhood, shame is like the core theme for me. Sexual shame imposed by religion. Yeah. So from the time I was born, from the time I was really young, I was always a very sexual kid.
Yeah.
And I feel, trigger warning, not even a trigger warning. I feel very lucky to say that I do not believe I experienced any early sexual trauma as a kid, which is amazing. Not in this lifetime anyway. It's great. Yeah, really great considering how common it is. But then, I say that because part of my journey, I've had my mind all boggled around this. Like, did something happen? Maybe not. No. Now I know that the core wound was I was very sexual and very affectionate, very loving, wanted to express that, and was very much shamed for expressing in ways that now, upon reflection, I realize we're healthy and normal. Yeah. But instead, being shamed in that way made me feel it kind of set this precedent for like many experiences, early sexual experiences after that, where I felt like I was too intense, like I was too much, like I was what's the word that comes to mind? I have issues around feeling predatory, like a conquester. Yeah,
I definitely
stuff like that.
had experiences like that.
Right.
Where it was like everything was consensual, but it was almost like being a like sexually empowered non-man. Like you are so hyper aware of the narrative that we get about like mostly male predators, and then it's like you're doing something where it's like some of the behavior is similar, and so you're like, okay, so I must be a predator then. And it's like, well, actually, this is like you're 100% sober. This is 100% consensual. You're both of age. Like, it's not the same.
No, it's
but
not.
We're not fed the narrative that there's another possibility. I definitely hear you there. Or just like I feel like it was the being more like sexually minded, or being more like wanting to like being more promiscuous, or wanting to explore that, or even again, like for me it was like identifying as a fuckboy or a player.
Dude, yes.
Just because like I was like, I don't want a relationship, but I still want to explore like sexual experiences, sensual experiences, intimacy. Therefore, like and doing it was weird, is the like the difference in terminology of like some people would call me a slut. And it was like, but that feels like someone who's not empowered, which is not true necessarily, versus like using more mask terms, that even calling myself a fuckboy was like point of pride, or of the like, okay, yeah, like the fuckboy is an empowered and accepted piece of shit.
Dude, for real. This resonates so much so much so. I have you like even a couple of weeks ago when I was talking, it was at Legacy, and I was talking to, I think, Lark and Leslie, some other people, about this whole solo poly stuff, all this solo poly thing. I referred to myself as a fuckboy a couple times, and I was like, am I just a fuckboy? I can't tell. No, I'm not. I am not a fuckboy. I communicate pretty well, turns out. Turns out. I
That was
just
my thing, that it was like feeling like such guilt for because usually for me it was the fuckboy thing, was the like having an experience and then like wanting it to end there. Like I didn't need
yeah
aftercare. I didn't want to give extensive aftercare. Like I didn't want to be like I didn't want to be in a relationship escalator. I didn't want this to be more than a one night stand.
right
And
right
because I didn't have the tools with like and the narrative and like the framework of how to do that healthily and ethically, the only kind of model I had was ghosting. And that was my nickname for a time, was the ghost. Oh my god, even getting into that was so much of it was again the neurodivergent stuff of being just like I just needed time to process, or I just needed, it was so frustrating how often people wouldn't believe me. Like I would try to directly communicate what I wanted and be like, this is what this is to me. Like I would like to hook up with you. We don't need to speak to each other again. I don't need to know your last name.
Don't want
Like,
to,
let's
frankly.
like have a fun
Too much
night
information
together,
for my brain.
experience each other, and move on with our lives. And then all of a sudden, I'd be like, they'd get in touch with my friends, who would then, like, of course, be on their side of like, oh, like this person wants to go on more dates with you. And I was like, we never went on a date. We said it wasn't a date, and I said I didn't want a date. And they're like, well, we didn't think you meant that.
Oh,
and I was like, why wouldn't I say what
why
I meant?
wouldn't I mean that? 100%.
Yeah.
I mean
And
that.
they're like, well, come on. You know, you actually want them to be your partner.
I
And was
don't.
like, no, I know I do not. I will let you know if that changes. But
100%.
I even like, and I was proud of myself that I directly stated that. I explicitly stated that. Like I wasn't trying to hide it. And I definitely had times where that wasn't said, and learned from that. Where it was like I was like, again, having like the seductress, the femme fatale kind of model of the like, okay, I'm gonna slink in here, and then I became the player. But like, well, now it's acceptable because I'll do this, but I'll just do it to other fuckboys, or like just do it to other players or people that like now I'm absolved of the guilt if there is misunderstanding, or absolved of the guilt if there is like, basically it became like the joke of the like, make the player fall in love with me and then ditch them, and then like society's like showed them like haha.
Been there.
Like, also not great.
Not great. Not great at all. My friend and I, my dear friend, from back in the day, we used to have this phrase, keep the power. That's all about keeping the power over the player.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you think you're fucking me over?
Yeah.
Like, guess what?
You know, you were playing checkers while I was playing three-dimensional chess.
Right. Which is also not a great, I mean, in retrospect,
but
I'm like, that's some avoidance shit.
Yeah.
Highly avoidant.
It definitely speaks to like why we are good at what we do now, is that, like I say, that it's like professionally, like I've been doing this for less than a year, but like I've always been kinky. And with that it's like, it wasn't very like clearly like structured black and white, what you would think of like BDSM and power dynamics, but I have been playing with power dynamics since I knew what power was.
For real. Same. I get it. I get it for sure.
It was the like studying, like we talked about, like being like studying human behavior and studying Marilyn Monroe, studying Cleopatra, studying the idea of glamour magic, being fed the narrative that I was not a physically attractive person, and so to compensate for that, I would need to be a master manipulator, and that the way that like, or that there is a way to get anybody attracted to you if you out strategize them.
Right, if you use your mind.
Thank you, WikiHow. The amount that I would read on that, like, how to flirt, how to kiss, how to like do whatever thing, and WikiHow is my go-to. They also had great little like comic strip like visuals to go with it too, and it was like, I may not have the like lived experience practice, or I may not be the prettiest person in the room, but by golly, will I be the most well-read, researched seductress in the room.
For sure. I get that.
And it worked.
Now
I get paid to exist.
Exactly.
Now people worship me as a god, and I have a cult. Technically, it's an anti-cult. We can get into that another time.
Another time. But
yeah, but nailed it. Thank you, WikiHow.
That's awesome, WikiHow.
And have learned beyond it of how to ethically engage in power dynamics.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Ethics is important.
And with that too, I think that's also shaped why, like, and wanting to do this professionally was very much from a desire of seeking the structure, the consent, the boundaries, the transactional nature of the experience. But what started this tangent was feeling almost predatory, like as a teen, as a kid, with being more sexually charged creatures. In a society that tells us to feel shame about that, or that to be like, to have any sexual interest is to be predatory. Or
for sure.
For
sure. And especially around So, there's that whole dimension of things, like just sexuality in general, and especially for me around wanting to give pain was a big thing. And so, for most of my kinky journey, I have subbed. Which
interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Which was, which was fine. That's a lie. It was not fine. At points, it was not fine at all. But also, you live, you learn. But that part of that was because when I would dom, and always this was under the influence. Always.
Yep, I definitely relate to that.
I would go so hard. I would just wake up feeling so scared of what I had unleashed.
I definitely feel that. I know, and we've talked about for me, like I have harm OCD, which is I do get, especially tied to like my misophonia, where it's just like hearing certain sounds can trigger like rage centers in my brain and makes me want to cause harm, and then I get like obsessive about like that becomes such a fear of like I don't actually want to inflict this harm or do this harm, or I want to inflict the harm, but I don't want to do it on a non-consenting individual.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like struggling with the complexities of that. And I always think of the phrase, like, you are not your thoughts, you're your reaction to your thoughts. And that definitely helped me, was like, as someone who has a lot of intrusive thoughts, that it was like, can we detach from this? And like, what is this actually trying to communicate? And even like the misophonia stuff, like a lot of it was dysregulation. But again, bringing it back to with the feelings of the shame of being sadists, or for me, sadomasochist. And it sounds like, do you identify sadomasochist or sadist who just had sub experiences?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
And that's okay.
I'm not sure. Because I do. I mean, yeah, I probably am that. I'm not good with the labels.
I can relate.
I'm not good with the labels,
and that's okay. Like, really, what those get at is like sadism. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like definition-wise, sadism, the enjoyment of inflicting pain on another; masochism, the enjoyment of receiving.
Yeah, so I am. I'm a sadomasochist.
So, cool.
So, thank you. I'm glad we figured this out.
Yes,
you've really been helpful. For such a fluid person, you've really helped me nail these identity markers.
Well, not just because again, like that's very much as a fluid person, it's been like through trying to claim these identities or trying to claim something solid and being like, but that doesn't fit. Like, that doesn't fit.
Right.
And it's like, what is the core of this? Like, what is this really getting at? What is this really trying to communicate? And also, and just with that too, that it's like, we can get into a lot of definitions that are evolving and changing. We could talk about like bisexuality versus pansexuality.
Yeah, for sure.
We could talk about, we've addressed like solo polyamory versus relationship anarchy, and how those are two distinct things to me, and you can be both.
Right.
Or you can be one and not the other. And with a lot of it, so it's what the definition originally was and the intention versus how society has taken it and molded it and evolved it, and how society is going to be interpreting that now.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I do think that we then are both sadomasochists, and just
we'll just leave
within
it at that.
and like recognizing there is nuance to what that means for us.
Yeah,
and then tying it back to what we were saying of the inflicting pain, the shame around that, the receiving pain.
Oh yeah, I was going to say. So when I was being trained by the excellent Mistress J, I remember breaking down, crying. I had such a reaction to, because when they trained me, they're just brilliant. They had a whole bunch of different questionnaires and stuff to fill out, et cetera, et cetera. It was really helpful as far as figuring out my footing as a dom. But I just had so much shame around the wanting to give pain part, and like wondering, am I a bad person? I mean, it's like it didn't even, I knew intellectually absolutely not, and I had such a hard time. Their partner bottomed for me, and it was hilarious. Looking back now, I'm like, damn girl, what was going on with you? But I just could not, I could not hit her. I was having such a hard time with it. And it's all, it's all these layers of,
which again, I feel like that sounds like how I experience like the harm OCD thing of it's both like, I want to do this, but also I so desperately don't want to non-consensually harm anyone. And even with their consent, like I still am like, this needs to be enthusiastic. This needs to be repeatedly affirmed. This needs to be very informed on both sides. And the, like, whatever implement we're using, whatever area we are, if it is impact, like whatever area we're impacting, like I need to know like safety precautions, and ideally like having a third party who's even more experienced there, having a safety plan in place, like in case anything goes wrong. Like I want to be so fully informed to like truly minimize the potential for a negative outcome.
For sure.
And
I mean, I feel like you're
once I
very
do
aware
that,
of that.
then in my way, like then it is so much fun, and then and it's been such a cool way to really, for me, like be healing that harm OCD and be healing. I think also my rejection sensitivity dysphoria can get into it too. Is that it's like then if something negative does happen, no matter how small, I struggle with like I will internalize that, and because from feeling it makes me feel safe to gain control, and if it's my fault, I can control that, I can change that, I can deal with that and shame myself for that.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Definitely a topic would love to get into with you on a later date when my
Next
phone is
time.
not about to die.
What are we at right now?
Probably like 5%. I can't see
Jeez,
that far.
Lord, okay.
But it's still going. Thank you to
Yeah.
everyone who stuck with us. I hope that you've gotten some value out of this.
Yeah. What were you? Something you just said. You know, I don't know how you feel about this. I think something that has really been just freeing and provided a lot of clarity for me is figuring out my style as a dom, because I do identify as a dominant, but I do like being mean, but humor is such a big part of how I play. It's like trickster energy all the way.
Loki energy.
Very much
like,
so.
The picture of Loki in there, that's I'm very like I like the trickster. I like it's very sassy.
Very
it's
sassy.
Much like
yeah.
Like I typically like I will only be mean to somebody who I know won't internalize or who I know knows that I'm playing, that I'm joking. It's very playful. It's like being a bratty dom essentially.
I get that. I get that.
It's like I just can't imagine myself being truly like vile, sadistic, unless again like then maybe like it's a character. It's a thoroughly negotiated like why do you want me to act this way towards you? What are you getting from this? And this is like these are the things I'm going to be saying to you. These are the things I'm going to be using on you. This is all like good to you and your psyche. Okay.
Yeah.
And even then, like that's like there's still going to be something like I'll still be like kind of like pulling back unless I really do like build a multi-year long probably like relationship with someone
for
to
sure
get to that point.
Well, and that's the interesting thing is I don't know if you feel this way. Well, I'm sure you do. Different people really do bring different things out of me. So I can enter I can enter a fucked up place if that individual I'm playing with, there's something about him that will just bring it out. But I don't know what that something is. I mean, it's energetic in a lot of ways, you know.
For me, it's when I start seeing like this is somebody who will advocate for themselves. This is somebody who has a clear just level of like self exploration that they've done, and is able to articulate just what I was mentioning, like what they're wanting, why they're wanting it, how it's going to impact them, and somebody who shows me like somebody who yellows me in a scene. I'm like, yes, celebrate that.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for doing that.
And I will affirm it
Seriously.
every time. I'm like, thank you for communicating, even if I'm like in sadistic dom mode. It's like, thank you for communicating to your god. Or like, thank you, like what
Bitch.
what a good little chair. God, like pleasing the god, like whatever it is, like it still can be done in a sadistic or dom way, But that like usually it's, I feel like we're picking up on sometimes it's even nonverbal indicators, like body language indicators of like this is somebody who you can have a safe experience with, that you feel safe to go to that sadist place. And
you're so right, because you can, and this is something that would be great to, I don't know, I would love to be trained on this even more, but in general, I think we could all use more. You can really tell in somebody's body when, like, if you're attuned to it, then you know. Then there's cues. You know, you can tell by the way that they're holding themselves that like green light or no. Do you know what I mean? And what is so frustrating for me can be when I'm like, dude, no, I see in your body. I can tell in your body. I know you're trying to impress me. You've got some sort of like machismo thing happening here. I don't know what this is. When it's about, exactly. But like,
or the moment like when somebody says like, if I like check in and it's like, what's your color? And like, oh, my color is like whatever you want it to be. Like,
no.
I generally avoid, and there's an exception to everything, but generally avoid like negotiating something within a scene because the dynamic is already in place.
Yes.
Like unless we're like gonna yellow, break out of the role, take a pause moment to discuss this and can get out of that headspace, okay. But if they're in subspace and I ask them something and their response is like, I'll take it for you or whatever, and we haven't talked about what that means for them psychologically and their experience with that outside of it, then I may not address it in the moment, but I'm still going to pull back.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, well, what I
Yeah.
want for you to take for me is some breath work and it's massage. Like, you're going to take setting boundaries for your god.
Yeah.
And that gets into like self-care domination.
Yeah.
It's something I'm thoroughly enjoying
I
building
bet.
out more and can discuss some other time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, recognizing I think it's going to die on us soon.
Okay.
So let's give some final thoughts. Is there anything else that you desperately need to get out?
That I need to tell people right now? I don't know. I don't think so.
Any deep dark secrets?
You got to give me more. You got to draw it out of me a little bit.
I can do that. I also want to leave it so that you come back.
Oh, I will come back
Extensively.
Yeah, I'll answer any direct question you have. I'll answer, and I mean that. Any question.
Thank you, direct, honest communicator. I respect and appreciate you.
I respect and appreciate you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, it was great.